This week, we got a rare look at the lengths political parties go through to control the narrative at elections. Sky News obtained a leaked strategy document from the ALP, which was sent to every candidate and every press secretary in the party. It makes for some pretty interesting reading. Labor candidates have been banned from doing any media interviews or stand-ups that haven't already been approved by campaign headquarters. These unelected party bureaucrats will also divvy out the approved talking points for the day. Now, it's fair to say that much of this would likely be standard across all major parties. But what these documents show is Labor heavies are particularly worried about mixed messaging, and they have every right to be.
Working the passing crowd is Labor candidate Matt Burnett, whose party was punished in 2019 for its position on coal.
What was the problem with it? And I said they wouldn't say coal. That was the issue. I will say it, and I'll say it every day. I've been in coal mines in Blackwater just recently, standing there with coal miners and saying, I support your job.
That's right. In the 2019 election, Labor was hurt in coal country by the perception it was hostile to mining jobs. And days before these strict new media rules were sent out, Labor's Flynn candidate was bagging his own party's approach at the last election. If Matt Burnett had to run these quotes past campaign headquarters, do you think Labor boffins would want them aired on the ABC? And after Labor lost the 2019 election, it conducted an in-depth review of what went wrong, and mixed messaging, particularly in Queensland over coal, was identified as a problem. In the review, they wrote, Labor hedged between not supporting the Adani mine outright while not opposing it outright, leaving it exposed to allegations of mixed messaging. This was because before the election, in a Queensland by-election, Bill Shorten said, I don't support the Adani project, and I don't support it because it doesn't add up economically and environmentally. Another strange part of Labor's leaked media strategy is that it will no longer send journalists transcripts of every interview. Here is our chief news anchor, Kieran Gilbert, grilling Labor's shadow housing minister, Jason Clare, about the ramifications of this move.
Is Labor taking a small target approach, not just in policy, but in terms of who you're putting out there? This directive that's been leaked suggests that only a few people will get their transcripts sent out, their interviews basically sent out to the media. Are you trying to minimise any slip-ups by doing that?
No, I don't think so. The fact is, one thing that's not seen in campaigns are the army of people that tend to sit behind computers typing up transcripts day after day, hour after hour. I'd much rather have volunteers out there winning votes than typing up transcripts. And the fact is, any journalist that wants to get a transcript of what I'm saying or an audio file of what's been said at a press conference can simply ring the campaign and get that audio file.
Labor wants to pass this off as a better way to direct its resources. But what it really means is journalists cannot easily compare talking points between each candidate. When a Labor candidate from inner city Sydney or Melbourne has different views on climate, coal and energy than regional candidates, does the voter really get an accurate idea about what the party stands for? Can a Labor candidate in Queensland privately promise to protect coal and mining jobs while their inner city colleagues privately promise policies will phase out coal? And publicly, can Labor get away with being scant on details altogether? If Labor muzzles its candidates, it looks united. And by not having philosophical clarity on key issues, it can effectively play both sides. And the real question is, will it work? Well, joining me to discuss this and all the big stories of the week, I'm joined by Sky News host Chris Kenny and YouTuber and commentator Daisy Cousins. Chris, let's start with you. Thank you for joining me on the desk. What did you make of this document? Obviously, you've seen multiple sides of campaigns as a journalist, and on the inside, it is fairly standard, but this transcript issue, that's what jumped out at me.
Yeah, great to be back on the show, Jack. Yeah, absolutely. I've helped run campaigns and I've covered them as a journalist. And look, this sort of stuff is practiced by both sides. You want a disciplined message. You don't want candidates and members running off with different messages, but it's much more stringent on the Labor side, and it's becoming increasingly stringent every election cycle that passes by. And what we're seeing here from Labor is lifting it to another level. And you're quite right. Exactly why do they not want to have transcripts out there? They don't want journalists to be able to easily compare what Joe Bloggs says in Queensland to what Anthony Albanese is saying on the streets of Melbourne. They want to make that as difficult as possible. And in the end, this is very anti-democratic because people deserve to see what their candidates, what their supposed elected representatives really say and really think, to judge them by their policies or even by their ability to stick to the script. And we're seeing less and less of this. And of course, this is happening at the same time that the number of journalists on the beat is being reduced. So the net effect is what's happening. The public are getting less insight. They're getting less insight, less access to information. Politics and democracy is being diminished as a consequence.
Yeah, Daisy, that's such a great point, isn't it? Because, you know, journalism, it's got less funding, there's less people on the ground. And when Labor effectively ties up this mixed messaging so you can't see it, voters aren't necessarily getting who they're voting for, are they?
No, definitely not. And honestly, when I saw this, particularly the issue about the transcripts, the impression I got was that Labor was doing kind of a reverse Joe Biden. So in America, they kind of put a lid on Joe Biden to protect the Democratic Party, whereas in Australia, they're putting a lid on the rest of Labor to protect Anthony Albanese. It's this peculiar way of reducing the transparency to what political candidates are saying that voters get. And I think obviously it is anti-democratic, but it's totally unsurprising that political parties are starting to do this, and I'm surprised this is taken this long for them to do it, because the media, as Hillary Clinton, dare I say, said, is much harder now for politicians to proverbially control than it was 10, 20 years ago, largely because of the internet, because of social media. Things go viral. You've got a lot of citizen journalists out there who can get this stuff and blow it up in ways they don't want. So while, I think this is very detrimental to journalism in Australia, it will make it harder for voters to know what the party's all about. I'm really, really not surprised they're doing it, and it really does indicate they are playing to win, and they probably think they will.
Yeah, well said. And, you know, I would have thought, Chris, that we wanted diverse policies. Don't you want your local member to fight for your specific policies as opposed to just towing the party line by, you know, unelected bureaucrats?
Look, you do. People want to hear from people. They want to talk to them. They should be able to come on Sky and talk. You try and get candidates on our programs during the campaign, you'll struggle because head office sits on them and says, no, you leave the space for the leader. And look, the analogy with Joe Biden is pretty important here. Joe Biden won the presidency essentially by hiding in the basement. They wanted as little as possible focus on Joe Biden. They wanted to focus on the animosity towards Donald Trump. That's very similar to this election. What Labor wants to do is throw up a character assassination in cahoots with the left-wing media every day, make it about Scott Morrison. How much do you blame Scott Morrison for floods, bushfires, heat, whatever? They want to blame everything on Scott Morrison and recycle any character attacks on Scott Morrison every day. They want to talk as little about policy as possible. They want to keep Anthony Albanese out there for a little hit every day, shut up their candidates and try and make it about Scott Morrison. It's high risk in the end because it underestimates the intelligence of voters.